Stop right there. You don't belong up here. Leave now.
I'm a paying guest. Room 1210. Move aside.
An executive suite?
Yeah.
No, show me your key card.
You approached me, accused me, and threatened police based on how I look.
Front desk, verify 1210, possible unauthorized mail.
1210 is Dr. Marcus Thorne, Stanford Medical, checked in last night.
To understand the day my life changed you first, have to understand the man standing in my way. Officer Gary Wilson had been working hotel security in downtown Seattle for 25 years. The last 12 of those were spent stationed at the Pacific Plaza, a five-star hotel where tech moguls, celebrities, and international dignitaries stayed in rooms that cost upwards of $700 a night. He had generated 28 complaints in those 12 years. 28 separate incidents where black guests, Latino conference attendees, and Asian business travelers were stopped, questioned, and accused of not belonging in a hotel they'd paid to stay at. Every single complaint had been dismissed as vigilance against trespassing. The hotel management called him protective. His supervisor called him thorough. No one called him what he actually was, a security guard who couldn't imagine that people of color could afford luxury accommodations, a man who saw brown skin in expensive spaces and immediately assumed they didn't belong. On a rainy Wednesday morning in downtown Seattle, everything about Gary Wilson's protected position imploded. I am Dr. Marcus Thorne. I had just finished my morning workout in the hotel gym. I am the chief of cardiology at Stanford Medical Center in California, one of the leading cardiologists in the country, and I was in Seattle for a 3-day medical conference where I was the keynote speaker. My hospital had booked me an executive suite. I'd checked in the night before. I'd attended the conference opening reception. I'd slept in the king-size bed and woken up early to lift weights before my presentation. That morning, I was a 43-year-old black man in sweatpants and a hoodie, carrying a towel and a shaker bottle, heading back to my room. And to Officer Gary Wilson, that only meant one thing: I didn't belong. That false assumption triggered a confrontation that would end in Wilson's termination, a viral video with 25 million views and an $8 million lawsuit that would force the hotel industry to confront how security profiles guests of color. Before I continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like mine need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Downtown Seattle, the Pacific Plaza, set on 4th Avenue overlooking the Puget Sound, a 30-story glass tower where business people closed deals. Tourists explored Pike Place Market, and conference organizers filled ballrooms with medical professionals, tech executives, and academic scholars. The lobby was slate and chrome. The restaurant served $120 steaks. The executive suites had panoramic views and separate living rooms. This was a hotel where wealth was assumed, where guests expected to be treated with deference, where security existed to maintain the illusion of exclusivity. I grew up in Detroit, the son of auto factory workers who worked overtime to give their children opportunities. I excelled in school, earned a full scholarship to Yale, then went to medical school at Stanford, where I discovered my passion for the human heart. I completed my residency, published groundbreaking research, and climbed to chief of cardiology by age 40. I earned $450,000 a year. I owned my home. I traveled frequently for conferences. I was accustomed to nice hotels. What I was not accustomed to, despite experiencing it repeatedly, was being treated like I didn't belong in the spaces my success had earned me access to. Wednesday morning, the medical conference was the annual American Cardiac Summit, 2,000 cardiologists from across the country. I was the keynote speaker scheduled for 10 a.m. My presentation was on non-invasive valve replacement techniques. I'd prepared for months. I'd rehearsed dozens of times. I was ready, but first, I wanted to clear my head. I'd woken at 5:30 a.m., changed into my workout gear, and gone to the hotel gym on the third floor. An hour of heavy lifting, some cardio, a good start to an important day. I'd taken the elevator back up to the 12th floor at 7 a.m., carrying my towel and water, my keycard, in the pocket of my sweatpants. I was thinking about my presentation, reviewing key data points in my mind when I stepped off the elevator and saw a hotel security guard standing in the hallway. He was looking at me, staring really, with an expression that wasn't curiosity. It was suspicion. I had been through this enough times to recognize what was coming. I kept walking toward my room, kept my expression neutral, kept hoping maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. Gary Wilson had been doing his morning rounds on the executive floors when he saw me exit the elevator. Black man, hoodie, sweatpants, no visible luggage, no business suit. His brain made instant calculations. Doesn't fit, doesn't belong. Probably snuck in through the fire escape, probably trying to burglarize rooms. He stepped into my path. "Sir, I'm going to need you to leave the premises immediately." I stopped. I had been mid-stride toward room 1210, my room 20 feet away. "Excuse me, I'm a guest at this hotel, room 1210. Wilson's expression was pure disbelief. "Room 1210, I don't think so. That's an executive suite." I felt the familiar exhaustion wash over me. "Yes, it is. I'm here for a medical conference. My hospital booked it." Wilson crossed his arms, his hand resting near his belt. "Your hospital. Look, buddy, I don't know what game you're playing, but guests don't dress like that." I looked down at my sweatpants and hoodie, then back at Wilson. "Dressed like what I'm wearing, workout clothes. I just came from the hotel gym." Wilson shook his head. "Sir, the gym is for paying guests. I've seen people try this before. You need to leave before I call the police." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Call them. I'll wait right here while you figure out you just accused a paying guest of trespassing in his own hotel. Do you think hotel security should face immediate termination for falsely accusing guests of trespassing based on appearance? Drop your answer below." Wilson pulled out his radio. "Security to front desk. Need verification on room 1210. Claiming we have an unauthorized person on the 12th floor." My voice was calm, but hard. "My name is Dr. Marcus Thorne. I am Chief of Cardiology at Stanford Medical Center. I checked in last night under my hospital's corporate account. I have a key card. I have my ID. I have my conference badge in my room. What I don't have is patience for being racially profiled by hotel security." Wilson's radio crackled. "Front desk here. Room 1210 is occupied by Dr. Marcus Thorne, Stanford Medical. Checked in yesterday. Corporate rate scheduled checkout Friday." The voice from the radio was clear enough that anyone nearby could hear it. I gestured toward my room. "You heard that I'm exactly who I said I was. Now, are you going to let me go to my room, or are you going to continue harassing me?" Wilson's face flushed, but he didn't move. "I still need to see your key card." "You need to see nothing. You already verified I'm a guest. You have no authority to detain me further. What you're doing right now is harassment and false imprisonment." A door opened down the hall. A white man in a tailored suit emerged, briefcase in hand, clearly heading to the elevators. Wilson nodded to him instinctively. "Morning, sir. Have a good day." The man glanced at the scene at Wilson, blocking me at my phone recording, and his expression shifted. "Is everything okay here?" I turned to him. "This security guard stopped me and accused me of trespassing. I'm a guest. Room 1210. He won't let me go to my room." The man's face darkened. "That's Dr. Thorne. He's the keynote speaker at the cardiac conference. I saw him at the reception last night." He looked at Wilson with disdain. "Why are you stopping him?" Wilson stammered. I was verifying his credentials. He just told you his room number. You verified it with the front desk. What else needs verification? Another door opened. A black woman in her 50s, also in running gear, stepped into the hallway. She took one look at the situation and immediately understood. "Dr. Thorne," she said, stepping forward. "I'm Dr. Sarah Jenkins. We met last night. Is this officer giving you trouble?" He stopped me and said, "I don't look like I belong in an executive suite," I said. Dr. Jenkins's expression was steel. "I'm in an executive suite too. Room 1215. Want to verify my credentials as well? Or is it just him you decided to profile?" Wilson was trapped now. Multiple witnesses, a recording radio confirmation that I was indeed a guest, and the undeniable reality that he'd stopped me based on nothing but my appearance. "Sir, if I offended you, I apologize. I was just doing my job." "Your job is to protect guests, not harass them," I said, my voice cutting through the hallway. "You saw a black man in a hoodie and decided he couldn't possibly afford to stay here. You didn't ask for my keycard first. You told me to leave. You threatened to call the police, and you only backed off after the front desk confirmed what I already told you." The man in the suit spoke up again. "I'm recording this too." He held up his phone. "I'm an attorney. This is racial profiling and unlawful detention. You should know that." Wilson's radio crackled again. "Security, we need you at the front desk. The manager wants to speak with you." Wilson looked at me, then at the growing audience, then turned and walked toward the elevators without another word. I finally continued to my room. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door. Not from fear, from rage, from violation, from the exhaustion of being excellent, successful, accomplished, and still being treated like a criminal. I sat on the edge of the bed and called the conference organizer. "You need to know what just happened. Hotel security just racially profiled me in the hallway outside my room." Within the hour, the conference organizers had contacted hotel management. Within 2 hours, the hotel's general manager was knocking on my door with an apology and an offer for a complimentary stay. I declined. "I don't want free rooms. I want accountability. I want to know how many other guests of color have been stopped by your security. I want that guard fired, and I want a public apology." The manager promised an investigation. I gave my keynote presentation at 10 a.m., 2,000 cardiologists in the ballroom. I opened with what happened that morning. Before I discuss valve replacement innovations, I said, my voice steady, "I need to tell you about the failure of heart I experienced 3 hours ago in this very hotel." The room went silent. I described the encounter in detail. Wilson's assumptions, his threats, his refusal to believe me until a white man vouched for my credibility. "I am chief of cardiology at one of the best hospitals in the world," I told them. "I've published 50 peer-reviewed articles. I've trained hundreds of residents. I've saved countless lives, but none of that mattered to hotel security. They saw my skin color and decided I was trespassing." The applause when I finished was thunderous. The video of my opening went viral immediately. Someone in the audience had recorded it. By afternoon, it had 6 million views. By evening, 12 million. By the next morning, 25 million people had watched Dr. Marcus Thorne calls out the Pacific Plaza Hotel for racial profiling. Should hotels face financial penalties for security staff who profile guests based on race? Let me know what you think. The hotel tried damage control, public apologies, promises of retraining, but the story grew bigger. Other guests came forward. A black tech executive who'd been stopped in the pool area. A Latino businessman questioned in the restaurant. An Asian family asked to prove they were guests before using the elevator. 28 documented complaints over 12 years, all involving guests of color, all dismissed. Gary Wilson was terminated within 1 week. The termination letter was direct. Officer Wilson engaged in racial profiling against a hotel guest, creating a hostile and discriminatory environment. His actions violated hotel policy, company values, and civil rights protections. A review of his record revealed a pattern of similar complaints. His employment was terminated immediately. Wilson issued a statement through an attorney. "I never intended to discriminate. I was following security protocols. If Dr. Thorne felt targeted, I apologize. My response was public and unforgiving. You didn't follow protocols. Protocols would mean asking for my key card. You followed bias. You saw a black man and assumed criminality, and the hotel let you do it 28 times over 12 years." The lawsuit came 6 weeks later. 10 plaintiffs, myself, and 9 other guests of color who had been profiled by Wilson over the years. The claims were devastating racial discrimination and profiling, violation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent hiring, and supervision. The hotel tried to argue Wilson was a rogue employee, but the complaint history destroyed that defense. 28 complaints, 28 dismissals. The hotel knew and did nothing. The case settled within 10 months. $8 million divided among the 10 plaintiffs. I received $1.2 million. I donated a significant portion to organizations fighting discrimination in hospitality. The Pacific Plaza implemented sweeping changes. A new security company with mandatory bias training. Explicit policy prohibiting questioning guests based on appearance. A requirement to verify guest status through key cards, not assumptions. An independent review board for discrimination complaints. Quarterly audits of security interactions. A formal apology to every guest who'd been profiled. But the damage to the hotel's reputation was permanent. Conference organizers pulled future events. Corporate clients canceled accounts. The Pacific Plaza became synonymous with racial profiling. Revenue dropped 35%. The general manager was fired. The ownership group sold the property at a loss. I became an advocate. I testified before the Washington State Legislature about discrimination in public accommodations. I paid $700 a night to stay at that hotel. I said, "My hospital paid. I was an invited keynote speaker at a major medical conference, but I was treated like a trespasser because Gary Wilson couldn't imagine a black man could afford an executive suite." I paused, looking at the committee. I had credentials. I had confirmation from the front desk. I had witnesses. I stayed calm. I documented everything. But I shouldn't have needed any of that. I should have been able to walk to my room in sweatpants without being stopped. That's what white guests do every day without question. The Washington Legislature passed the Guest Protection Act 8 months later. Hotels with more than 50 rooms must train staff on anti-discrimination policies. Security personnel must document reasons for stopping guests. 3 substantiated complaints trigger mandatory review and potential termination. Hotels face fines up to $50,000 for patterns of discrimination. My keynote speech was used in hospitality management programs across the country. My calm recounting of the profiling became a teaching tool about implicit bias and its real-world consequences. My lawsuit became a case study in corporate negligence. But my message never changed. This isn't about Gary Wilson being uniquely racist. This is about a system that allows security to use race as a proxy for belonging. This is about hotels that prioritize the comfort of white guests over the dignity of guests of color. This is about the assumption that nice hotels are for white people and everyone else needs to prove they can afford to be there. Gary Wilson's career is over. That's consequence. I received a settlement. That's accountability. But money and terminations don't change the fact that 28 guests were profiled over 12 years. They don't address the countless others who were stopped and didn't complain. They don't fix the bias that makes hotel staff see black guests in hoodies and assume they're trespassers. I continued my work at Stanford, but the incident left its mark. The hyper-awareness when staying at hotels, the instinct to dress formally, even in casual settings, the exhaustion of knowing that my professional accomplishments meant nothing to someone who only saw my skin color. Therapy helped process the trauma. Community support provided validation. Advocacy gave me purpose. 2 years after the incident, I was invited back to Seattle to speak at a hospitality industry conference on diversity and inclusion. I stood in a hotel ballroom, not the Pacific Plaza, but a competitor down the street, and addressed an audience of hotel managers, security directors, and HR professionals. When Gary Wilson stopped me, I began, he didn't see a doctor, he didn't see a keynote speaker, he didn't see a guest who'd paid for an executive suite. He saw a black man in a hoodie, and his brain told him he doesn't belong. That's not a security protocol. That's racism disguised as vigilance. The room was silent. If your security staff can't imagine that guests of color can afford your rooms, you have a problem. If they stop black guests at rates 9 times higher than white guests, you have a problem. If you receive 28 complaints over 12 years and dismiss all of them, you don't just have a problem, you're complicit in discrimination. I paused. I was lucky. I had credentials. I had witnesses. I had a platform. But most guests don't. Most people who get profiled in your hotels don't have the resources to fight back. They check out early. They never return. They tell their friends. And you lose business because you hire security that treats brown skin as suspicious. The hotel industry began to change slowly. Major chains implemented bias training. Security companies revised their protocols. Guest complaint systems were reformed. But the fundamental challenge remained. How do you train people to question their own assumptions when those assumptions feel like common sense? I partnered with the American Hotel and Lodging Association to create a training program. Real scenarios, video examples, role-playing exercises. The goal wasn't just to teach what not to do, it was to help security staff recognize their own biases before they acted on them. I also created a resource for travelers of color, Know Your Rights Hotel Edition, a guide explaining what guests can do when profiled, how to document incidents, how to file complaints, how to escalate to corporate offices. The guide was downloaded 350,000 times in the first year. But despite the advocacy, despite the reforms, despite the lawsuit and the termination and the public apology, the incidents continued. Different hotels, different cities, different security guards making the same assumptions. Black guests stopped at pools. Latino families questioned at breakfast. Asian travelers asked to prove they were guests before using amenities. The pattern persisted because the bias was deeper than any one person or any one policy. 3 years after my confrontation with Gary Wilson, I was staying at a hotel in Miami for another conference. I was in the hallway outside my room, dressed casually after an evening presentation. A security guard approached. "Excuse me, sir, are you a guest here?" I felt the exhaustion return. "Yes, room 1404. May I see your key card?" I showed it. The guard nodded and walked away. No apology, no acknowledgement that he'd profiled me. Just a routine verification that white guests never experienced. I went to my room and called a friend. It never ends. I'm still being stopped. I'm still being questioned. It doesn't matter what I've accomplished. It doesn't matter how many hotels get sued. Someone always assumes I don't belong. My friend listened, then said, "But you keep fighting. You keep speaking up. You keep making them uncomfortable. That matters." It does, I agreed, but it shouldn't have to be this hard to just exist in the spaces we've earned. The real question is, what changes now? Do hotels finally understand that guests come in all colors and all income levels? Do they finally train security to verify guest status without profiling? Do they finally create consequences that make staff think twice before assuming someone doesn't belong? Because if we don't fix the systems that protected Gary Wilson through 28 complaints, if we don't address the bias that teaches people brown skin doesn't belong in nice hotels, if we don't demand that hospitality means welcoming everyone who pays, then we're just waiting for the next viral video, the next lawsuit, the next guest who gets treated like a criminal for checking into a room they paid for. Comment below if you think hotels should lose their business licenses after 3 substantiated discrimination incidents. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, if you think accountability matters and hospitality means respect for all paying guests, then hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding that hotels fire security staff who profile before complaints reach 28. We're going to keep fighting for a world where a doctor can walk to his hotel room in sweatpants without being accused of trespassing. This isn't just about Gary Wilson or Dr. Marcus Thorne. It's about all of us, and whether we're willing to confront the bias that makes luxury spaces feel like they're only for the white and wealthy.